Hey, greetings, everyone. This is your host and executive director for the American Institute of Stress. It's Will Heckman. I want to thank you all for joining us once again today. And I also would like to ask, if you're listening to this podcast, watching it, please go to stress.org and subscribe to our magazines. Check out all the information we have about stress and stress-related issues. And, I'm going to ask, if you're watching us, please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. It helps our channel grow. And don't forget, today's podcast is sponsored by Alpha-Stim, which we're going to talk about in a little while. If you're struggling with anxiety, insomnia, or pain, and you need to take a look at Alpha-Stim. It's the FDA-cleared non-drug medical device trusted by healthcare professionals worldwide. Alpha-Stim's proven patented technology uses a gentle microcurrent to help you feel better and feel better fast, without the lasting side effects of medication also. It's easy to use, it's portable, it's backed by extensive clinical research. Listen, Alpha-Stim fits right into your daily routine, so make sure you visit alphastim.com to learn more and take charge of your life. All right, so joining us today, I'm going to get right into who's joining us because we have a very, very special guest, Dr. Kathy Platoni. She is a retired colonel from the U.S. Army and has been practicing clinical psychology for 43 years. She maintains her private practice in Centerville, Ohio, in service of her country, and as an Army Reserve clinical psychologist. She is deployed on 4 occasions in times of war. Dr. Platoni served as commander of the 1972nd Medical Detachment at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, from 2003 to 2004, where combat stress control became a critical element of the Joint Task Force mission in supporting Operation Enduring Freedom in the global war on terrorism. Having volunteered to return to active duty within weeks of her redeployment from Joint Task Force Gitmo, Dr. Platoni deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, holding the position of Deputy Commander in Clinical Services for the 55th Medical Company in Baghdad and 7 subsequent locations. Finally, as officer in charge of Team Al-Ramadi, situated at the seat of the insurgency and during times of intense combat. At the invitation of the 3rd Brigade Commander, 3rd Infantry Division, upon the conclusion of her tour of duty in the wartime theater, Dr. Platoni reported to the home of the infantry in Fort Bennings, Georgia, for an additional 6-month mission in order to provide for the reintegration services of the 2nd Battalion, 69th Armored Regiment, due to the elevated numbers of psychological casualties among the combat armed soldiers. Dr. Platoni was last deployed to combat theater in Afghanistan from 2009 through late 2010 with the 467th Medical Detachment in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, serving as clinical advisor for the Medical Detachment and officer in charge of Team Wilson, Kandahar Province, and Camp Phoenix in Kabul, Afghanistan. She is a combat veteran and also a survivor of the Fort Hood massacre, which took place on November 5th in 2009. Also, since the 9/11 tragedy and attacks on the United States, Dr. Platoni voluntarily deployed to New York City on 2 occasions in order to provide disaster, mental health, and critical incident stress debriefing services to members of the New York City Police Department. And in 2017, she deployed to hurricane-ravaged Florida to provide disaster mental health services with the American Red Cross. And in May and June of 2019, in support of tornado relief in the aftermath of 15 tornadoes that devastated the area of Southwest Ohio, where she resides. She currently serves as Daytona Police Department SWAT psychological and mental health advisor to the Dayton hostage negotiation team. As a nationally renowned expert in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, Dr. Platoni has been featured on and in Fox News, CNN, USA Today, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report, AP News, The Guardian, Huffington Post, Washington Post, NPR Radio, Stars and Stripes, the San Antonio Express News, San Francisco Chronicle, Boston Globe, the Ohio Psychologist, the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, Military Times, and the National Psychologist. I'm sure I left some out. And for her professional contributions to the field of psychology and decades of humanitarian service, Dr. Platoni was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by her alma mater, Hobart and William Smith Colleges, in 2008, and was selected for the very prestigious Dayton's Top 10 Women Award, the class of 2012. She was awarded the Legacy Award for Community Service and Volunteerism in the Southwest Ohio area in April of 2013, and she was awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptionally meritorious service by the United States Army on July 19, 2014. Dr. Platoni was the recipient of the 2016 IVAD Returning Veterans Resiliency in Response to Trauma Award. This award is given by the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. It's given to a veteran who has experienced specific trauma in war and whose efforts and advocacy have had a notably restorative impact on a traumatized population. Dr. Platoni was inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame in November of 2019 for her numerous contributions to the veterans and law enforcement communities. In November of 2020, Dr. Platoni was the recipient of the Ford Oval of Honor Award, again, for more than 4 decades of military and tireless community service. Honored once again by the Dayton, Ohio community, Dr. Platoni was selected as the recipient of the 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24 and 25 Best of Dayton Psychologists, entering her into the Dayton Business Hall of Fame on 4 consecutive years. Dr. Platoni was inducted into the Greene County, Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame in April of 2022, and Colonel Platoni retired from the 4th Civil Support and Sustainment Brigade, Ohio Military Reserve, in September of 2021 after 6 years of dedicated service as the brigade psychologist, her 40th year of military service. And we are also so proud to have her as our editor of Combat Stress magazine, which is published by the American Institute of Stress. And at the time of this recording, our fall edition just came out. So make sure you visit us and see that edition. Please join me in welcoming my friend and very special guest, Kathy Platoni. Kathy, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for the great honor of doing this podcast with you. This is quite special.
The honor is ours. And I know I
so
left
you
out.
Say.
Well, it is. And you know,
thank you.
Just by reading your resume, anyone can see why the honor is ours. And personally, I would like to thank you on behalf of being a former New York City police officer and also a person who lives in Florida, both communities of which you've helped greatly. So thank you from bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you for all the gratitude and appreciation. And
you've
wow,
earned it.
Thank you.
You've earned it. Listen, I wanted to have this conversation with you today because I wanted to learn about a few things.
Sure.
One is about your background and how you first became involved with stress management in the military. Now, I realize that people have to realize that our men and women in harm's way in defense of their country, they have to face a little stress.
Just a tad, yes.
Yeah, but how did you get involved in it?
Well, the first line of defense in deploying troops, as an example, is to teach them how to manage stress, particularly combat stress, because anybody who deploys to the combat theater is going to see combat. There is no rear echelon. So teaching soldiers and Air Force personnel and Marines and Navy personnel how to cope is one of the most important skill trainings that you can give them, because the stress is everywhere and it's not like you can go home at night.
Right.
So teaching them that just a few tricks of the trade in gearing down and de-escalating from the tremendous burdens of the combat theater is essential.
And you saw that need and stepped in to help. It's amazing. It's
Absolutely, right off the bat. And
yeah.
really, all mental health professionals in the armed forces are trained in stress management. It's one of the most basic tools that we are taught to teach others. So there's a real push for that.
That's got to be so hard because not everyone, pardon me, is the same. And you meet two people serving in the military, and you'll get three opinions on what's stressing them. So,
Exactly.
you know,
It's a yeah, you're right. It's on a case by case basis. You have to tailor your approach to the individual.
right. But you've obviously been doing this a very long time and have come across many individuals. What would you say, if you had to say, because I'm asking you, what are the most common stresses you observe? I realize some of them are pretty obvious. The bad guy shooting at me is pretty obvious.
That's just a tad stressful. I think that and family separation,
Oh, okay.
and marriages going south are probably the three greatest stressors in the combat theater. It's really hard to be away from your family and to have so little contact. I mean, every time soldiers or other military personnel are killed in action, um, all communications, the internet goes down. Well, it used to be that way. It's much more liberal in this day and age. But we would go into what was called a commo blackout for up to 2 weeks so that next of kin could be notified, and that is an additional hardship for military personnel because their support systems just aren't there. They're thousands of miles away. So
I didn't even think about that. And you're right. The separation of family and everyone you know, and a place your own country. You're
in
separated
your
from
yes,
how far and then how difficult that must be. I knew
absolutely.
when I was a police officer a long time ago, they they perfectly understood that 8 out of 10 police officers were divorced,
Yep,
and we chalked it up to the job and a couple other things, but the military must have that multiplied exponentially because not only are your relationships under stress, but you're not even there to help fix it.
right. And a lot of family members back home are angry,
Mm.
and not because they have any reason to be other than they're left to their own devices
Right.
and don't have the support of their spouses or their siblings or their children. You're on your own for 12 to 18 months, sometimes even longer than that at a time, with not a whole lot of resources, particularly for the reserves, because they're not necessarily near any military installations where all the resources are. So you're cut off from the world. And
Yeah.
it would be 10 months before I would be able to use a payphone to call home.
And it
That's,
makes sense. I mean, if you do have a lot of communications, they could be compromised by the enemy.
yes,
So
they
so
could. Oh,
and are. So I understand, and that must be very hard. And I know back in the day, I have friends, many friends who are veterans. Um, the the stigma attached to having a mental health issue while you're in the military could get you, I don't know if demoted, but certainly fired from where you want to be. or moved around. Do you think that's changed? Do you think that the
That's changed
conversations?
tremendously,
Oh,
which is why I deployed with combat stress control teams on all four of my deployments. And we call it combat stress. We don't call it mental illness, although you definitely will see people who have
yeah,
some serious mental illnesses. But for the most part, it's combat stress, exposure to the wartime theater, and PTSD.
yeah,
Particularly if you deploy over and over and over again, you're going to see an awful lot of PTSD. That does not prevent military personnel from functioning highly in the combat theater. It's usually when you come back that the lid is blown off and all of those symptoms come come home to roost.
right. They come to
But
fruition. Yeah,
it's horrific because when you come home, your old self isn't hanging in the closet, and everything that you've seen and dealt with and smelled and heard and seen is unforgettable. And again, that's why we deploy with combat stress control teams that move as far forward into the combat theater as possible. As an example, I was embedded with the 3rd Infantry Division in Iraq and the 4th Infantry Division in Afghanistan. And where they went, I went, so that I could always be available. And that's how you build trust. And that's how you get people to open up so that you can help them.
it's got to be so helpful to have somebody like you there, because when you get back, I was the same way. When you get back, or you've gone through a really challenging day, and you know what I mean by that.
Oh, yes, I do.
You don't want to share that with your family.
No, you don't.
I always felt that why in the world would I want to put those images in their head? Why would I want them to even know about this?
And
And
typically
ruin
you
their
don't.
innocence.
And you want to spare them from the horrors of war, the horrors
Exactly.
of police work. And
Yeah.
what do you do with what you're carrying around with you?
Right.
That's why with combat stress control teams, we try to teach them the skills that they can use when they redeploy. Unfortunately, mental health professionals are not in great supply in the combat theater. And when people come back, they just want to go home and try to feel normal again, not realizing that now they're facing the real burdens that they had to put on hold and kind of compartmentalize or wall off while they're deployed. And that's when mental health professionals are most needed and not reached out for as much as they should be. That has improved definitely over the decades.
Well, it's got to
But
be
there were
cathartic just being able to talk to somebody like you.
absolutely somebody
You know,
who's walked in your same boots and been in the
yeah,
trenches.
yeah. I mean,
Very true.
I remember people that I worked with, for my short time as a first responder, our sense of humor was a little dark.
It
And
has to be.
yeah, I realize that now. But when you go
That
back to your family, yeah,
how do
it's
you turn that off?
yeah, you're you only you can do only that. Turn it off.
Yes, but there's not always an off switch,
Right.
and readapting to the way we live our lives here is a major challenge. Uh, and gallows humor is a major coping skill. I mean, there's not a whole lot of funny things going on in the wartime theater, so you've got to make your own fun and do stupid things just to make yourselves laugh. We did it all the time. I can't even won't even tell you some of the
Famous
idiotic
thing.
things that we did, but I
Oh,
will tell you a funny story.
please.
That's kind of a an adage to gallows humor and the things that came out of our mouths. The first patient I saw when I came back from Afghanistan, this was in March of 2011, was a lovely, lovely nurse. She was just elegant. And we started our session, and all of a sudden, an F bomb came tumbling out of my mouth, and I was mortified. Well, at that point, the session was over because it was so unintended. All we could do was laugh hysterically for the rest of the hour.
Right. and
Yeah,
and
that's what we
and
did.
and it probably released so much tension in her that it
Oh,
was
oh,
a
yes.
successful session just because of that. Congratulations. That's the kind of bombing we'd like to see. Because it was
So
a
well said.
curative,
Yes.
it was a curative bomb.
It
Let,
was
let me ask,
curative. Yes.
so Kathy, when you're there and people are under stress, and a lot of times, especially command people, because you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but they tend to be stoic and they tend to be, be, they do the job. But how do we keep that stress that they're under? Now, not only are they in a combat theater, but they have other people's lives
Right. In their
in,
hands.
in their
Yes.
hands. How do you keep the stress of that from impacting their performance or decision making and or overall mission readiness in the military?
You have to be very creative with commands in order to make that happen. First, you have to develop trust and rapport. You need to spend time with them. You need to have have chow with them. You need to hang out in the barracks area so they begin to trust you and see you as one of them. And that's when commanders begin to open up, because
Yeah.
when they see you as one of them, it becomes safe. And that's not an easy task to accomplish. And also, when they see what you do for their soldiers, they're much more willing to come to you, sometimes very late at night when everybody's asleep and there's nobody around, to know that they're seeing the psychologist or the social worker or the behavioral science specialist. So it gives you a very unique perspective as to what their stressors are, because all of their soldiers' lives are in their hands.
I
So
can't
their
imagine.
stress is massive. Yes.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's why some people are just not built for that job.
Some people are not. I mean,
And yet they get
I
promoted anyway.
they're good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Sorry.
it's the Peter principle. People rise to the level of their own incompetence.
Right.
But I have also seen commanders relieved for cause and sent back because they couldn't cope and they were abusing their soldiers.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah. I mean, you're dealing with people we're not robots yet. Um,
Nope.
so, so you're dealing with a lot of people. And I know that my introduction to behavioral psychology was in the police academy when we studied behavioral psychology. And the big subject there was the us and them kind of mentality that you had
Oh,
to
yes.
lose. You had to lose that. And for
You
us,
have to lose that.
it was not so much us and them, working man and bosses, but us and civilians. But for
Yes.
you guys, you don't really interact with the enemy. You might interact with civilians, and you
Oh,
sort of
yes, that does happen.
and yeah, you got to remember who's who.
Yes, you do. I had some wonderful interactions with Iraqi women, and you know, they were such incredible human beings and had
Yeah,
tolerated such incredible abuse. I would give them money and gifts just to help them out. Um, it was heartbreaking.
yeah,
The hatred of the Afghan population towards American military was way beyond palpable.
yeah.
So the interactions, except with the interpreters, was never a pleasant thing. I was called to the battalion aid station to help a woman and her family who had been injured in a mortar attack, and she had shrapnel throughout her chest wall.
Hmm.
And we didn't have an interpreter with us initially, and I was asked to calm her down because she didn't want any of the male medics touching her, and we didn't have any female medics. So I just tried talking softly to her and touching her arm or her shoulder to try to calm her down. And at first she complied, and then she became enraged for reasons that I will never understand. And she threw me across the room. Yeah, the
Wow.
Afghans don't love Americans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that before today. You know, and I understand, but please don't throw Colonel Platoni across the room. Thank you.
Well, it wasn't very hard. I weigh 88 pounds. So
I know you're. For those of you who have never seen Kathy, she's about this big. And,
that would be me, yes.
all right, to switch gears a little bit, there's something I wanted to talk to you about because you're one of the few practitioners who has used and has been successful with the people who sponsor this podcast, and that's the Alpha-Stim. Um,
Yes.
how were you introduced to the Alpha-Stim? Tell us a little
Oh,
bit about it.
oh, this is a great story. I worked at the pain unit of Miami Valley Hospital from 1988 to 1993. And I was introduced to the Alpha-Stim there, and I was fascinated. I saw these patients with this horrific chronic pain getting better.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated. So I wrote a testimonial, and Dr. Dan Kirsch read it, and hence our friendship was born. I kept using the Alpha-Stim after I moved on from Miami Valley Hospital at other chronic pain units in other hospitals and community-based programs. And everywhere I went, I took this technology with me. When I was deployed to Iraq, and I had continued to use the Alpha-Stim in all of the practices I worked in, and even when I I opened my own practice, everybody who I was treating was getting Alpha-Stim treatments and they were getting better. And I don't get paid to say this, but I am rich from seeing the results. In Iraq, I was interviewed on the phone when we had phone service, which was a miracle, by a Washington Post reporter, and I spoke about the Alpha-Stim unit. Well, Dr. Dan Kirsch and his wife, former vice president of EPI, Tracy Kirsch, saw the article and decided, oh, we are going to send some Alpha-Stims to Iraq. And hence, Alpha-Stim in the military was born. We only had, well, I think they gifted us 9 devices. So each forward operating base at which we had combat stress personnel received a device. Of course, I was the only one who knew how to use it. And I tried to train the other personnel, but there's no contact. They're hundreds of miles away at all these different forward operating bases and outposts. So I tried my best to train them when we had internet or when we had phones. I don't even know what happened to those other devices. But at FOB Ramadi being the seat of the insurgency during the height of the war, we had a lot of combat stress casualties. We had a lot of KIAs, killed soldiers and Marines killed in action, and even more wounded in action. People, soldiers and Marines would line up outside our clinic, which was an old stone building, all night long waiting for an Alpha-Stim treatment, whether that was for chronic pain, acute pain, anxiety, depression, PTSD, combat stress. It became, I mean, we were famous throughout the region for the use of the Alpha-Stim, and I am not exaggerating. It was a godsend, especially when you combine it with other forms of treatment. And oftentimes it was just a standalone treatment. When I redeployed and spent 6 months at Fort Benning, I had to hide the use of the Alpha-Stim because they threatened to send me home because I was using the Alpha-Stim, which was born out of tremendous ignorance. Dr. Kirsch and Tracy actually sent me devices to give to some of my patients for home use. They are the most generous people I've ever met in the world. I don't get paid to say that either. But that started a movement of training well, basically military medical centers, the larger facilities throughout the nation, and opening up clinics dedicated to the use of the Alpha-Stim. It was absolutely miraculous to see how this blossomed from coast to coast and overseas as well. And that was a joint effort from the Kirsches and other practitioners and me, and we made it work. And the Alpha-Stim, well, I've been retired from the military for 4 years now, so I don't know the status of the use in major military medical facilities, but as I understand from what I've read, it is still in place with dedicated holistic medicine clinics and pain clinics, both at the VA and at major military medical centers for use with soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen and women, and so on. I do know, however, that it is no longer used at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base right here at the Dayton area for reasons that I cannot understand. They have closed us off. But I get a lot of referrals from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I do treat active duty military personnel, and guess what? They're getting the Alpha-Stims through the VA.
I've
So,
actually seen pictures of you using it with Dakota Meyer.
oh, I've never met Dakota Meyer. That was not me.
Oh,
That was someone else.
oh,
But
I
I
thought I
would,
saw it. Maybe it was I just saw him using it.
yes,
That's
yes.
possible. I'm old and I'm forgetful. So I have to
I'm
tell you,
older than you.
I agree with you. You being someone who's used the Alpha-Stim for many years for a lot of different things. Um, at first, you're very skeptical. How's this little machine? Should I be taking like a drug?
Oh,
That's
that's
the mentality. Yeah.
right. That is the mentality. Take a pill.
Right.
That's, the effects are temporary. There's side effects that are unimaginable. There's
Oh, yeah.
building up of a tolerance, so the medications stop working. There is every good reason to try the Alpha-Stim first, which is what I tell my patients. And even if they're on medications, a lot of them discontinue their medications or they reduce the amount. That's been the case for the, what, 36 years I've used the Alpha-Stim. 36 years. It is the best thing since sliced wheat bread, white bread, rye bread, sourdough bread, whatever. It is the best thing. I don't sell it, I
Yeah.
prescribe it. But again, I am wealthy from seeing the impact it has on all of my patients, whether they be military, first responders, or other than that.
I've witnessed it myself. I've
Yes,
witnessed somebody being in pain, including myself, within 5 minutes,
within five
feel,
minutes,
feeling
you
better.
see a difference.
And the thing that people don't realize, because it's a new technology relatively, although I don't understand why it's not that new.
No,
It's not that it's not sci-fi anymore.
it is not
That
sci-fi.
we
It's
we
been
should be more accepting of it. Simply,
absolutely. But the problem with that is big pharma rules. Everybody's looking for a quick fix. We have no
yeah,
impulse control or frustration tolerance in our culture. Everybody wants a pill, so it will go away immediately, which is not treating the root cause at
right.
all.
In fact, it causes other problems.
It causes other problems,
Yeah.
the side effects.
Right. And the
Yes.
addiction to opioids and things like that.
And the
Horrible.
terrible addiction to opioids.
Yeah.
I have patients that I can't allow to drive to my office because they are so addicted to opioids. They're a danger to society on the roads.
I just hate hearing that. I
Yeah.
recently I had a fall and I banged my head open. I wish it was a
Oh,
good story.
oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sweetie. But you know what? I wish it was an interesting story. I tripped on, leave it. That was it. So anyway, so while you're at the hospital, they're sewing me up and doing all the things they want to do. Right away, they're pushing opioids on me. And
Oh,
I'm
yes.
telling him, dude, it doesn't hurt. I'm okay. Give me an ice bag. Like, what? No,
They are
it's
so quick to push it. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And I went home and I did use the Alpha-Stim. In fact, um, both myself and my daughter have been treated by Dan Kirsch.
How good does it get?
so my daughter, like Dan has treated me like, uh, damn, my back is hurting. Really? And I'm fine. My daughter was very skeptical because she had hurt her back. And Dan treated her, and within 10 minutes, she never felt better, like in the last year and a half of when she hurt her back. So,
Well, people,
when you personally witness things like that, you have to say, okay, how hard in the head do you have to be hit to understand that it works?
well, that's why I keep a billy club next to my desk. No, okay.
Carry a big stick. Well, let me ask you something. Was there any particular situations or conditions when you were on base or something like that where the Alpha-Stim seemed to be most effective?
Oh, God, many, many times. Oh, I'll give you some examples from the combat theater.
Please.
Um, as soon as I got to the forward operating base from Kandahar Airfield to Fob Wilson, um, it was within days. There had been a horrible tragedy, and 5 soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division were killed and literally blown to bits by an IED, 2 IED explosions. And not only were all of the soldiers in this particular platoon suffering from traumatic brain injuries because of the force of the blasts, they all had witnessed their beloved friends just vaporize in front of them. So PTSD was rampant. PTSD is rampant in the combat theater because most of us have deployed several times. I was able to keep these soldiers in Afghanistan and not medevac them back to the United States because of the use of the Alpha-Stim and other therapies conjunctively. But the Alpha-Stim had as much to do with their being able to remain in the combat theater as any other intervention that I gave them, despite severe PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, and chronic pain. Again, lining up for treatment in Afghanistan because the Kirsches had gifted a number of devices. Amen.
It's
Witnessed
amazing.
it with my own eyes, witnessed it with my first responders.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Dan and Tracy and one of our reps from Columbus started 5 first responder programs in the area of Southwest Ohio, in which we trained every shift from multiple police departments and fire departments how to use the Alpha-Stim. These departments would purchase these devices to keep in a lieutenant's office, for example, so that all of these trained officers or firefighter paramedics would have access to the Alpha-Stim. We actually published a research study using the Dayton Police Department and some other local departments that sent their officers for the training. I would say 98% of my patients use the Alpha-Stim in my office if they don't have their own.
Right. I think
People,
from a practical sense that police departments in the military would have Alpha-Stims readily available. And I say that because if you're a first responder and you've just been through a really challenging situation, and you could sit in your lieutenant's office or a designated area where you can sit with the Alpha-Stim and de-escalate your emotions so that you can go back on duty, how much cheaper is that than sending you home for a couple of days?
Or a week or 3 weeks, or
Or,
sending you to the department psychiatrist or
yeah,
physician to get
all of
on
that.
meds with it, which impair you on the job.
So just from a practical sense, it is time for us to look to other avenues to treat a lot of things, including besides just pain management, which I've used it for, but for sleep and insomnia, which certainly combat vets and first responders have a
Oh,
problem with.
nobody sleeps well in the combat theater, but if you've had an Alpha-Stim treatment, you might actually be able to sleep through the night, although with one boot on the floor,
Yeah.
but you might actually get some decent sleep.
Well, okay, so things have changed a bit, and it's certainly more than a bit in the
More
military.
than a bit
I think
in
they
the
see the advantage of having someone like you in a combat theater or Ohio PD, seeing having you, you know, help with their SWAT team and help with incidences that happen. But what kind of advice would you give service members or veterans or their families who are seeking a safe, effective way to manage their stress?
the first thing I would offer them when they come in for for a clinical interview or psychological evaluation is to assess what their needs are, what their symptoms are, what their goals for treatment are, and set up a treatment plan, which for me always includes the use of the Alpha-Stim. Always,
I think,
because it's so powerful
yeah,
in its many effects in improving the quality of life, in reducing stress, reducing pain, reducing anxiety, reducing depression, quieting the brain with PTSD, all of these things.
I think that's so true. It's really good advice. First of all, seek a professional when you need one, and come up with a plan
Come up with a
that could
plan.
include the Alpha-Stim. I've had friends
Always.
come to me with, like I said, I have a lot of friends who are vets, and I also have a lot of friends who are Leo, law enforcement officers, and I've had conversations with them, and they're upset that they are feeling what they're feeling. And my first question to them is, what kind of person would you be if you didn't feel that way?
Right.
You're
Normal
supposed to.
reactions to extremely abnormal life circumstances. How could you not feel that way?
Exactly. But we grow up thinking, oh, we're not to. At least my generation did grow up trying be more stoic, be a man, be tough.
Right.
So
Bury your feelings
yeah,
and drink them away.
yeah, that'll
Uh,
that won't
right.
work.
Oh, yeah. Like that isn't a central nervous system depressant.
Right. So, but I've talked to a lot of first responders now, and there is something in place now. And I spoke to a police officer from Chicago who is now a psychologist, and we discussed the problem. And he said something very enlightening. And I'll see if you agree with it. He said the only way to make this so it has no stigma attached to it is make it mandatory. Once or twice a year, you need to sit down with a department psychologist and just discuss your job. But if everybody has to do it, then there's no stigma attached to it. You're going to see him. I'm going to see him because my job told me to.
There you go.
I kind of thought that was
That,
a good idea.
you know what? That's a foot in the door.
Yeah.
And what I have been instrumental in arranging in Southwest Ohio. Well, I provide services to 41 different police departments and 7 fire departments, not all at once, but anytime right, anytime
It's a busy
there's an
day.
off. Oh, they are anyway.
I know.
Anytime there's an officer-involved shooting or a major critical incident that overwhelms the senses, they are automatically referred
Good.
for a 90-minute clinical interview and authorization for 3 treatment sessions. And everybody knows who I am. It's a small town.
Right.
So the stigma is pretty much gone here.
That's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that. You know who should be backing this more than anyone else? The civilians out there. You know, when a
Yeah.
police officer interacts with you, you don't want them stressed out.
You know what? That's
Stressed
right.
out. You want them calm and happy, you know. Kathy, I appreciate so much you taking the time to talk to me. I always learn so much when I speak to you. But I have one final question.
Oh, please bring them on.
All right. I'm not talking to Colonel Platoni. I'm not even talking to Dr. Platoni. I'm talking to Kathy.
There you go.
Because I've seen pictures of some of the things you do as a hobby, which scares the crap out of me. Jumping out of planes is. But what do you do to help manage your own stress?
You know, I write profusely. I write articles for publication. We're working on our 4th book. That's one of my major forms of stress management. And the other one, yeah, skydiving. I'm going
Yeah,
on Sunday if the weather holds.
well,
And of course the Alpha-Stim.
right.
Absolutely. But yeah, those 3. But yeah, I have to go skydiving because when we're in free fall, it's like all the crap in my life flies away. I I know that is insane, but yep, that's a fact.
Well,
And
you're
also,
talking to a guy who's afraid of heights. So,
yeah, so's my husband, and he's a retired Air Force navigator. Go figure.
right, right. But
But
it's a good point that you said that you write. I've heard a lot of positive things about people journaling and writing and how helpful that can be. So,
well, truth be told, many of our authors for Combat Stress magazine are encouraged to write their own experiences.
sure.
When they come into my office, I can't tell you who, but I encourage them as part of their therapy because it's cathartic, is to write. And hence, many people who never knew they could write are our combat stress authors.
That
Kind
amazing.
of a wonderful thing.
It's amazing.
It
Kathy,
is amazing.
thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you had to slip me in so, just to talk
but
to me.
but it's been such an honor and a
Oh,
pleasure and a joy
th-
to be able to celebrate this wonderful device that I don't sell, I only prescribe because it has been life changing for literally thousands of patients. Life changing in the combat theater, in my office, in police departments, fire departments. Oh my God, for dispatchers.
right.
I cannot say enough about this. It has revolutionized what I'm able to do for so many suffering souls.
Well, on behalf of myself and for the rest of our country, I want to thank you for all you have done and all your service over the decades that you have dedicated to this country and to the men and women in military and first responders. So thank you, Kathy.
Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for appreciating that. I have had many gifts and many blessings through the
Many more to come.
military. And yes, thank you very much. You
And
have a
for,
wonderful day.
thank you. And for those of you who are still watching with us, don't forget to visit us at stress.org. Take a look at Combat Stress Magazine. Even if you're not a veteran or a first responder, there's a lot of information in there that is absolutely fascinating. Some real heartfelt stories that will hit home with all of you. This has been your host, Will Heckman. I want to thank you again for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and like this. And I want to remind everyone, Just as stress is different for each of us, there's no one stress reduction or management strategy that is right for everyone. So that means you need to join us next time as we explore more stress management strategies and insights on finding contentment. Thank you all.